Appreciate folks joining today. So Pete Crawford, one of the co-founders of Acre, with me here, my teammate Peyton, whom many of you probably already know. We do these webinars pretty regularly, about every 2 weeks. And usually we talk in general terms about how Acre works and for whom it works, but we wanted to focus this session specifically on relocation situations because we do see a ton of folks who are relocating to the Southeast where we're active, in the markets where we're active. And this is the kind of customer profile, client profile that can come at any time of the year. So we're kind of here at the end of a summer period where we would typically see some slowdown, but one area where we haven't seen anything slow down is in this relocation kind of segment. And we know that this is a really attractive client profile for our real estate agent friends as well, but also one that's kind of tough to serve at times. So we wanted to talk about that. And we'll walk through very generally a bit of how Acre works at the highest level. Most folks that signed up have heard from us before, and so I didn't want to spend too much time on that. I wanted to spend more time just on the relocation. But the Q&A is available. If you do have questions, we'll address those as we go. But to just start off again, big picture, who's the team? What are we after? There were 4 of us that started this company. The idea was that we wanted to create something that really got the best of both worlds going for folks when they're trying to get into their next place to live. So you should be able to pick a home and make it yours and have that sense of ownership in the home that also comes with some financial upside in the home, but also have flexibility. We just saw that the modern American family really needs that. We ourselves, the 4 of us, are all family folks. We all have children. Between the 4 of us, we have 13 kids. So there's, we have busy lives and there's constantly change that we have to adapt to as our family grows. And so we felt like there needed to be more options there. So the thing that we created was a unique take on a lease option structure. And what's unique about it is that you do get to pick a home. We partner with your client, or we partner with you, the buyer, in the purchase of that home. We actually buy it in cash on your behalf. And you get to share as the resident in the home's appreciation. And unlike other things you may have heard of before, like a rent-to-own program or something like that, you don't have to end up going to get a mortgage on this particular home in the future if you don't want to. That's totally fine. You can decide to move on, and you'll still get to share in a home's appreciation. The core of it for us is what we call the value share. It's the 5% that folks put toward the home up front, 5% of the home's value. It's kind of like a down payment. This is what enables us to extend all these different benefits. We are going to make a cash offer on your client's behalf. They're not going to pay any transaction fees of any kind. That 5% they put toward the home is it. They get to share in the home's appreciation while also saving on a monthly basis versus what a comparable mortgage would be on a monthly basis. And then we also cover the major maintenance of the home. So think like HVAC and roof and those things that if they were to fail would be a really significant expense for a family. That's on us, not on the resident. The areas where we shine versus where we're just not a great fit. So we are a lease with appreciation. We are focused on folks who are have good credit, or qualified, have options, could get a mortgage if they want to. It's a standalone solution for a wide variety of buyers. This is not for a vacation home. It's for folks' primary residence. It's not something we can use with, say, a down payment assistant program, but it's also not limited to first-time home buyers, and could be useful for a lot of different client scenarios. And we're going to talk specifically today about the relocation scenario. So relocation, what's going on here? So I mentioned in the Southeast, that's where we're focused. So we're active in the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina. We're active in Atlanta. We also have some folks, you'll actually see one of their stories in a moment, who are in the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area. And we're expecting to start offering this in Charlotte as well. So if you have folks that there or who are moving there, we'd love to talk to them as well. But the bottom line here is that the movement that we've seen over the last 5 years, sort of starting pre-COVID, certainly during the COVID era, has continued. People are moving to the Southeast. Georgia, North Carolina, they are net recipients of folks. And this, of course, doesn't even speak to the folks who come into these markets from outside the US who are coming to these fantastic job centers. So I'm sure you all have seen this. I'm sure you've seen among your own client pipeline folks who are relocating from out of the metro, out of the state. But what are they solving for when they're trying to find their place in a new place? What are they looking for? Well, a lot of times they want to get into a specific neighborhood or specific school zone. And I really emphasize the school zone part as a draw for folks. And I think what's important about that is if you are moving to an area that you don't know well and you do have children, you probably do know where you want them to go to school. And to be honest, what we see very often in both of our major markets is that if the school is that desirable that you as the newcomer know about it or have been able to find out about it as you're doing your research, you probably have to buy your way in. There may not be all that many rentals available. You want a quality living situation in your new place, for sure. You want to not have a sort of rundown spot or bad neighborhood. And for so many people, when they're moving to a new area and they're an experienced homeowner, they don't want to sort of, we hear this sort of go back to renting. I don't want to go back to renting. It feels like a step in the wrong direction for them. And so that would tend to lead them to, well, I'm probably going to go buy a home when I relocate to my new spot. But that's not the only set of trade-offs people are facing. The other things that they face is that they just don't know the area well. So they might know where their new job is going to be. They might know where the school is that they want to send their kids to, but they don't know what's going to really fit their family vibe. They don't know where they want to be long term, or if the job is taking them to Atlanta this year, but in a few years' time, it might take them outside of Atlanta. And so they're not sure they want to jump right into something long term. We'll talk about this. Peyton's been handling a couple of situations lately where people needed to move very, very quickly. In this current day where we find ourselves, for some people, particularly in our Atlanta area, their schools have already started. And so folks who are now trying to move really have a sense of urgency around getting into that home. And then, of course, there's still this nagging issue of mortgage rates. People who bought a home a few years ago in their current area, current city, may be looking at mortgage rates for the first time in a few years and saying, wow, this is way more than I expected. And so all of that might lead them to renting. And in fact, most people, when they are relocating to a new market, new city, new state, they are going to end up renting at least for a while. And what does that mean to you all as the real estate professionals? I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but just to kind of put it in stark terms, if somebody goes to buy a house, you get a buyer commission. That's a pretty significant amount of compensation for your troubles. If somebody goes to rent, you might show them a bunch of rentals, and about the best you can hope for is like a Starbucks gift card and a hearty thank you. And in case you're wondering, like the 10,000 is much bigger than the $50 in firm handshake.
Also, the other thing to think about too is when people go to rent, you're not getting a very big paycheck, and then also you're hoping and praying in a year's time they call you back.
Right.
Many times they don't, or they find someone else to call.
Right.
So you need to capture them now when they're interested.
So this is where we come in as a resource both to you and to your clients. What they get to do when they partner with Acre to get into a home is they get to pick a home that's for sale, not for rent. So they get to go be a traditional buyer in that sense, even if they weren't necessarily intending to find a home to buy for the long term. That's going to give them access to a different neighborhood. It's going to give them access to different schools. And that could be really significant for folks. Of course, this is, I've mentioned a couple times, it's a cash transaction, especially in this current market situation. Being able to have cash and make a compelling offer that's going to close quickly and has that certainty to close is really, really meaningful to sellers. Sellers who are now at the end of summer wondering, oh my gosh, is this home ever going to sell? I mentioned this before. They get to share in the home's appreciation. So as that home goes up in value, so does their share in the home. And again, they get that regardless of what happens in the future, meaning they don't have to buy this home later, go get a mortgage or pay cash or whatever to buy the current home to have that benefit of the home's appreciation. They have the flexibility to move on if their needs change, or if they get into a neighborhood and they've been there a little while and realize, Yeah, it got us into the school zone. Yeah, the commute's not bad, but this is just not the right neighborhood for us for whatever reason that might be. And then, of course, you get a buyer commission, as Peyton was saying, like buyer
Mhm.
commission now versus
Down the road,
the
maybe.
hope. Yeah. All right. So, um, if you do have questions, please fire away in the chat or Q&A. We'll go through a few different scenarios here of relocation clients that we've worked with and sort of how they made this work for them and why it was a good fit.
And many of these are in the last few months
Right.
too.
Yeah.
So
Some of these are real. Well, actually, one of these is
current
still in
one.
flight. Yeah, as we say. So, first up here, I mentioned outside of our normal Raleigh, Durham, and Atlanta markets, we have a couple of residents. So these folks are in Greensboro, North Carolina. Um, one thing I point out as I put these folks up is if you are sort of still trying to figure out, okay, this is a lease option, like what kind of home quality are we talking about? What price points are we looking at? A home like this is a great example of what we're typically buying with folks. This is not a sort of rundown home in the bad part of town. It's a lovely home at a really healthy budget that these folks were able to get into. So they were moving Pennsylvania to North Carolina, hadn't lived here at least in a long time, and hadn't lived in Greensboro ever. Mr. Watson is a manager at Amazon, so doing fine, great credit, great income, has options, but decides that he really wants to have some flexibility. He was an experienced homeowner. They owned their home in Pennsylvania, so they've been through the buy and sell process before. They've seen the upsides and the downsides of that, and still thought this was a good option, particularly because, as we've hit on a couple times, they were really optimizing for schools. Schools were really important to them. So he knew where the Amazon facility was, and they knew where they wanted their middle school age kids to go to school. And that's about it. And as they kind of drew the circles around those two things and said, where's the overlap? They found a lovely neighborhood where they were going to have to buy their way in to get into the right schools.
Yeah, there just is no rentals in those kind of
Yeah.
neighborhoods.
And that's still true. I mean, even today, it's been a bit since they moved in, but yeah, that was not an option for them. We'll talk about Mr. and Mrs. Darden. So here in the Raleigh area, and these folks were coming from California to North Carolina. They're small business owners. So what's interesting here is even though, again, they're doing fine in terms of credit and income and all of that kind of stuff, and they had options. The fact that they were small business owners set them up in two ways to be really well served by Acre. One is that on the approval process side, we just have a much simpler process than a lender will typically have. And we can essentially give a small business owner credit for more income often than a lender will, just because there's a lot of write-offs, there's income coming from different sources, et cetera. And so we were able to smooth out that process. But the other part was they just didn't want to go get a big slug of debt on their home because they're small business owners and they're taking risk there and wanted to reinvest money and debt service and all that kind of stuff in their business.
And oftentimes when you're a small business owner or 1099, they're going to penalize you for having that type of occupation,
Right.
give you a higher interest rate, making you put more down, which is
Right.
painful.
Right. Again, these folks were previous homeowners, proud baby boomers. The reason I bring that up is because these folks actually got featured in the Raleigh News and Observer in a story talking about how baby boomers are experimenting with different ways of getting into a home. And for them, that was not just the things that we talked about for them as a relocator or small business owner, but also that they have this flexibility in the maintenance support. So they're not going to be worried about the roof failing or something like that and them having to cover that expense. All right, the Leone family down in Snellville, Georgia. So they were coming from Florida to Georgia. I think they were actually from somewhere else before. So they're part of these folks who like moved south to Florida and was like, that was a little too far south. So then they moved a little farther north to Georgia. Again, had a home in Florida that they were selling. And we were able to smooth out that process for them as well as they were trying to plan for what's next and hadn't quite closed on the last home yet. Also, small business owners, we were able to ease that transition, give them credit for their hard work and their small business as they were moving up to Georgia. Again, lovely home in Snellville, a very desirable area. Very recent one. Maybe Peyton, you can tell the story of the Gentry family.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was a big one where they were moving from Maryland, had the house to sell, so a lot of things going on, but she actually got promoted in her job, which moved her down to North Carolina. And she came down here to visit and was like, I have to be in a house in, I forget, I think it was like 10 to 12 days. It was very, very quick timeline where she's like, I start my job in 2 Mondays. I got to find a house today or tomorrow, pretty much is what it was.
Yeah,
And so, we got her through approval very, very quickly that day. We were able to go find this great home in Wake Forest. It was an awesome situation to go through, and they're loving it.
yeah. We got a question from Joni. Thank you, Joni. So the question is, I assume you can only purchase in neighborhoods that don't have rental restrictions. Actually, no, not necessarily. We have bought, I would say, probably most of these homes we've featured here are in communities that have an HOA that have some stipulation around rentals. It's an issue we definitely want to get ahead of if we do have a target home that's in a community like that. But oftentimes, what we found, and really with very few exceptions, we found that we can show quite honestly that this is not a typical rental. It's not subject to the rental cap that might be in place if that exists in this, in a particular neighborhood. Because these folks who are moving into the home are not traditional renters. They have skin in the game. We're not going to put a for rent sign in the yard ever. It's just it operates very differently, and we're able to demonstrate that in those situations where somebody's taken a hard line on a rental cap. But that's a very good question.
But one more thing to point out for the Gentry family too is they, like I said, they were trying to sell their home, but they weren't quite ready to do that because they had work to do on the home and some other things going on. So they were able to get approved with us still with still owning the home and still having another mortgage. Because when we go through someone's approval, we're not necessarily looking at their debt to income ratio. You can have another mortgage or something like that. And so it's easier process for them to actually go find a home at the same time of owning their other home,
Yeah,
which is a common situation we see.
very common, and particularly common now where people have that home and they have a mortgage on that home that has a much lower rate than what they could get
Mm-hmm.
today. And so they may not even be interested in selling it. These folks were, but we talk to folks who already have a home, want to keep it in their previous state or city of residence as a rental. That's fine because to Peyton's point, we're not looking at a full debt to income analysis, and we're not going to penalize them for that in a way that a lender often will. Let's see. Okay, last up, and this is the one that's kind of work in progress. These folks were closing next week, again in North Carolina. So this family coming from Arizona to North Carolina. It's a job change for this person. Really fantastic opportunity in a new state. She is the Mrs. Richards here is an experienced homeowner, so she's been through this drill before. She has equity in her current home. And can bring that to bear as she's selling that. Again, she had a very, very short timeline. So here in this part of the world, our school systems don't start until typically the 25th of August. So she had a little bit more time than some of the folks we've worked with in the Atlanta metro, but still wanted to get in, get settled prior to school starting.
This was one
with
that
her
she
kids.
was able to come fly in, get approved, pick out the house, fly back,
Right.
and start packing.
That quick. I mean, it was like 48 hours
Yeah.
exercise. So not bad at all. Again, optimizing for schools or schools being a big part of the story for her. So happy to still answer questions as folks have them. But one of the questions we do often get is, okay, so I've got somebody. What do I do? How do I refer them? A couple kind of rules of the road, maybe, or just reassurances even to you all as real estate professionals. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can connect us by group email, group text. That's how most folks introduce us. We don't expect you to have all the answers about Acre. You're not responsible for selling Acre in any way. Something simple like, hey, I'm excited to work with you as you're relocating to, Raleigh, to Atlanta, to wherever. I really would recommend you check out this company called Acre. It can be a great way to help you find a great home even as you're getting settled in a new place or something along those lines. You don't have to sell it beyond that. Just put us on a group text. We'll find a time for a 10-15 minute phone call together, and with you and your client.
One thing that I hear a lot is from agents is I just don't know how to explain this to my client, so I just haven't done it. So like to avoid that, just involve us. We don't expect you to be the experts. Just throw us on a call, text, email, so you don't have to feel like you have to have all the answers, because that feels like a lot of pressure as an agent, and
Absolutely.
I don't want people to have to think that way. So
Yeah. And everyone has unique needs or unique questions about it, like given their situation. And so, in the same way that you might not feel comfortable having some of those more finance related questions with, say, a mortgage lender that you have as a trusted partner, you don't have to be a part of that conversation either if you want to. We will keep you in the loop at every step of the process as somebody goes through approval with us. Anytime we have an interaction with somebody, we'll let you know what we learned or what we talked about. We want to keep you in the loop through that. Let's see. So question is, have you all considered offering 1 year, 2 year, 3 year options, or is there too many moving parts for us to offer that? So the initial agreement that we sign with folks is a 3 year agreement. And if folks want to stay longer than that as an Acre resident, they can. If they want to stay shorter than that as an Acre resident because life has taken them somewhere else, they can. Now, if they do leave before the 3 year mark, we'll recoup some of our transaction costs that we've incurred, but the answer is not no. And for a huge portion of folks, even with that recoupment of costs, we're still handing them back their value share, the 5% they put in up front, plus a share of the appreciation, net of those costs. So for some people, that still makes sense. The only time that it becomes a question before the 3 year mark is if their intent is to buy the home they're sitting in. Again, that's one of their rights. They can do that at the 3 year mark or any point after. Let's see. What other questions do folks have?
a common one I get when people are relocating in a hurry is like, how quickly can someone apply and get approved? So
Yeah, you want to talk through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy. It's about 10 to 15-minute application online. Should be pretty seamless. Just putting in their income documents, personal information, etc. And then we usually, if it's in the earlier part of the day, we can many times get back to you same day, and usually at the worst, a business day. So pretty quick. I think that shocks people a lot of times when you tell them
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, and we've had people who track along, and this wasn't a relocation scenario, of course, but we closed a home last month with some folks who we met back in December. And they weren't quite ready. So we tracked along with them and kind of stayed abreast of their situation, got them finished with their approval this summer, got them into a home in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, actually, in their case. They were really, really
And funny enough, we were tracking along with them for 7, 8 months. And then when it came to it, they had a very quick timeline.
Right. Once they finally were ready.
They're like, okay, we got to go now.
Really ready. We've had folks who, this is no exaggeration, we met on a Monday for kind of an intro call, got them approved on Tuesday during the day. They went out to look at homes that afternoon, and we were making an offer and under contract by dinner on Tuesday. I mean, it's not always that quick, but we are perfectly fine working that quickly. All right. If you do have other questions that you wish you'd asked, or you have any other information you wish we'd covered, please don't hesitate to call or text the number there. You can reach us. That's our general number, and one of us will respond right away, get you what you need. The email address as well. You can reach out anytime. The QR code there, if you're interested in that, is just a way for us to get a sense of like what kind of materials would be helpful to you as you're taking this out to your own clientele or in your own marketing. If there's anything we can provide you for whatever you're doing, social media outreach or marketing campaigns of any kind, please let us know. We'd love to equip you with that as a way for you all to, again, activate more buyers. And as this wave of folks continues to come to the Southeast, help them get into a situation where it's the right neighborhood for them, where they have that financial upside in the home, and they're not just renting for that period that they're getting to know this new
Acre can
place.
be a fantastic lead generation tool of bringing
absolutely.
people back, introducing something new to somebody, something new and exciting. It's a great tool. Like, here's this really cool thing I just learned about.
We got a question from Francisco. Thank you, Francisco. If they decide not to live there anymore after year 3, do you then list the home normally on the market? Yeah, by and large, the answer to that is yes. We usually do just list it for sale and come back to the last agent who brought us a resident for that home to give them first right of refusal to list that home. So it doesn't just disappear forever once an Acre resident gets into it. Let's see. If so, what's the process for the person to get their proceeds? So if they do decide to cash out, yeah. So essentially, they'll notify us 90 days out. We'll get in touch with them if they haven't notified us to say, "Hey, we're coming up on your contract end date. What would you like to do?" And they say, "Hey, I want to move out." We say, "That's great." We'll do the analysis of, "Hey, here's where the home value is currently." Cash them out their proceeds, um, and they can move on. We don't have to sell the home for them to get paid out their proceeds from the home, if that helps.
It's very much a check and key exchange.
Yeah, yeah, we do try to make it really really seamless because a lot of times if folks are moving out of the home that they've been in with Acre, especially if they're relocating again to a new market, like speed's going to be of the time's going to be of the essence again. It's going to be essential. All right. We're happy to hang out for a few more minutes if folks have other questions. But for those who need to drop off, again, thank you for joining today. We'll have more of these coming up on different topics. So please keep an eye on your email inbox.
If you have any topic suggestions, let me know.
All right. Looks like we are good on questions. So thanks again. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.